welcome to our next episode of Outlook. This is a conversation about life brought to you by Students for Life Ireland. And today we are joined by Madeline Paige from the Alliance of Pro-Life Students UK. So thanks for joining us, Madeline.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
So I guess lockdown is kind of ending in the UK. Is work kind of still remote? Is campus life still going to be remote learning this next semester, or how's it going how's lockdown? Lockdown affecting your work?
Yeah, so it varies. So different universities are sort of making different decisions about whether they go back in September. I think one or two have announced it'll be online for the first term. So obviously that adds a different level of complexity to our students reaching other students. And then some others are saying they think they will try and go back in person. So at the moment, still quite uncertain, I think, as everything seems to have been with lockdown. So we'll just have to wait and see.
All right, great. So I guess the first thing to ask is, what is Alliance of Pro-Life Students, your UK APS? What do you do? What is it? What's it about?
Sure. Yeah. So we were founded in 2012 by a group of university students from different universities that wanted to try and have a more sort of better support for each other and a more kind of coherent way of advocating for the pro-life cause on campus. So our main sort of aspects is we start pro-life societies on university campuses, and we support students who want to do that. So there's quite a long process that they have to go through. At the moment, it usually will take pro-life students about a year, which is a lot higher than sort of other societies. So we handle a lot of censorship around that, and then we do a lot of education too, so equipping students with the knowledge about sort of pro-life apologetics, and then also how to have a pro-life conversation. I think is sort of the key that so many of us are looking for. And then the final thing we do is we connect students together as well. So it can sometimes feel quite lonely being a pro-life student, as if you're sort of the only, maybe you and a few friends are the only one with this opinion. So we do events as well that we get everyone together, and they're always really fun.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that sounds like a pretty big operation. Did it take a long time to get this network up and running? Because, if you're working with people on lots of different universities, helping to get them set up, do you usually do you initiate things, or do you let people like students on the ground kind of come to you for help? What kind of form would that help take when you're helping people set up societies? And how were you able? How long did it take to set up this kind of network across the country?
So it varies. I mean, it took, we try and sort of build on it year on year. Obviously, part of the difficulty is that student life's very transient. So most are at university for 3 years, and then they go, and naturally people don't really get involved maybe until they're a year in, which makes things a bit difficult. But and I think that's one of the main reasons as well why APS was founded, was to help provide some kind of stability too, so that when there is this high turnover, we're still there to give the support and sort of knowledge to the students. And in terms of starting them, so it varies. So often students will come to us and say they want to start a society, but we also go to different events. So we'll go to different pro-life conferences or student events and talk about what we do. Because often the problem is that there are students who they are pro-life, but they're not really sure how to act on it or what to do about it. And often people tend to find us through social media first, but I find if we're in an event and I'm having a conversation with someone, they say, "Oh, actually, that's exactly what I've wanted to do, but I just didn't realize that there was support, or that it was something that I really could do." So that's quite a big part of it too.
Cool. Okay. So have you yourself always been pro-life, or how did you get involved, and what made you do it?
Yeah, I would say I've been passively pro-life. So I think when I was in sixth form, in my last couple of years of school, in conversations with friends, I would describe I would say, oh, well, I wouldn't have an abortion, but I wouldn't want to take that decision from someone else, because there was something about it that made me feel uncomfortable, but I didn't really have I wasn't equipped to know why. And then I got to university and I studied philosophy, and I did encounter, I was really fortunate, there was a pro-life society there already. and and so I started going along to those events while also studying philosophy and studying, ethics and morality, and looking at, essentially looking at death quite a lot is basically what we do. And I think I just became so what sort of the turning point, I suppose, for me was I became so aware that in my seminars, I was the only person that was advocating for something even vaguely true. And these were all very well-educated, people studying philosophy, literally, spending their days looking at morality and ethics and still reaching what to me seemed like, wild conclusions. Yeah, and I just became more involved, became sort of through my own research, through what I was studying, and I did a dissertation on abortion as well, while also attending all the pro-life events. Really just solidified for me really that it is, being pro-life is really the only option, and how can I therefore share that with other people and make other people understand that too.
Cool. So you've had a lot of success. So clearly you're not the only one who thinks that. There have been 16 life societies set up across campuses in the UK recently. So just, I guess, in your work with APS, what have been some of the challenges, successes, and lessons, I suppose, that you could share with us from your experience?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, censorship is the big one that I think we come across, and that gets talked about the most, and it's been in the news quite a lot. And I think I've seen you guys have been experiencing that as well. So that's definitely a big one, and sometimes that can come in subtle forms. So it can come in the form of bureaucracy, or kind of extra red tape that's being given to us that isn't given to other societies. So the need to hire very expensive security for an event, filling in, really long speaker forms for external speakers, things like that. So that's a big problem. I think there's also an element of self-censorship too. So students who perhaps, and I've done this myself too, will choose not to have a conversation or choose to not say that they're pro-life because they're concerned about the ramifications. And I mean, I think that concern is, there's a certain amount of weight to it, but I think that compounds the problem as well, because then it's not being discussed at all on campus, and people aren't even trying to have those conversations because they don't want to. So I think that can be a problem. And then probably the final challenge I would say is apathy, student apathy. I think that's something at APS we're still learning how we can combat. And it's something we regularly talk about, is how can we really motivate students to do something for the pro-life cause. And I think once they're invested in the movement, once they've really seen sort of the facts, I suppose, and understand the issue, then there's no problem in getting them motivated. But it's making that link, I think, is difficult.
Yeah, wow, definitely can relate to that whole the self-censorship thing as well. But yeah, just often you don't want to rock the boat, or you feel like you don't want to be that guy. But would you say it's kind of necessary to make that leap sometimes, or to risk being, you know, kind of put out there, or looking a bit silly almost, but to take the risk anyway, just to keep the conversation on the table? Would you say?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I think something that students actually do without necessarily even realizing is busting stereotypes that people have of pro-lifers, that we're, all, super old men that really want to control women, which isn't the case at all. And so I think by having the courage to say something really helps. I think also not being afraid to have all the answers. I think sometimes we feel when we have these conversations that as soon as I enter into this debate, I need to be super equipped to combat every single thing that they say to me. But that's not, especially with friends, it's not supposed to be a debate. It's supposed to be a conversation. And for that conversation to be fruitful, we need to be listening to them, and also I think having the humility to say, actually, I don't know, let me look it up for you, and going away and finding out the information and then starting that conversation again. But yeah, I mean, it's hard, and there's definitely times when even now, someone will ask, on the train, or where are you going to? And I'm about to, go and talk at some pro-life conference. And it's so easy to say, oh yeah, I'm just going to a conference to give a speech, rather than say what I'm, actually what's at the heart of what I'm doing. So I think naturally there are times when having that conversation maybe isn't so appropriate, or for whatever reasons it's sometimes it's okay just to remain quiet. But I'd say in the majority of cases, I think it's just having the courage to be bold, which is it's just
That's
difficult.
that's so cool. That's so cool. That's very it's hopeful, I suppose. The idea that it's not about how good a debater you are. It's just even just letting people know that you're pro-life would have that much of a difference, and that kind of like some impact on people. So I guess just what kind of have you noticed any success? What are kind of the fruits of the work that you've noticed? I suppose you're trying to change attitudes to abortion. So have you seen any positive developments in that area?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the number of societies that we have now, so over the past 18 months or so, it sort of started to snowball really. We had eight about 18 months ago, and now we've doubled to 16. So I think that in itself is a really good testament that people really are. I think it's two things. So I think it's obviously people taking the pro-life message on board, but then the second stage is actually doing something about it as well. So not just changing people's minds or making them, because I'd say a lot of these people were already pro-life to an extent, but having them realize the gravity of the situation to actually step forward and do something about it. So I'd say that is a massive thing. And then the stories that we hear from students themselves of having a really productive conversation with a housemate, or just at the pub with a few friends, having the courage to have that conversation, and there and then they're not going to change someone's mind. And even if they did, unfortunately, no one really has the humility to admit it there and then, oh, actually, yeah, now I'm pro-life. No, that's not going to happen. But I think that's what's really positive. And one of our groups, our group in Birmingham, during lockdown, they've been releasing kind of like testimonies of different people in their society and how they became pro-life. And so many of them, it's as a result of encountering the pro-life message at university. And that's something that it's not just for that society. I've seen it at loads of other places. And my own story as well. I came to university not an active pro-lifer, and now I talk about abortion and euthanasia and stuff around the country, and I wouldn't have thought I would be doing that 5 years ago. So I'd say those are some pretty good successes that we've had.
Yeah, that's really cool. That also definitely very hopeful that there's that these things are happening beneath the surface, that maybe people's attitudes are changing. We know that there's people who are getting activated who weren't pro-life and now are becoming actively pro-life. So that's quite hopeful that even if it doesn't look like on the surface that massive changes are happening, that actually developments beneath the surface could be happening. So I guess just one more question is, what are your kind of hopes for the future for APS? Where are you hoping to go? What are the kind of things you can reasonably hope to achieve kind of in the mid future?
I mean, unreasonably, I'd like to see pro-life groups at every single campus, every single university across the country. That would be the sort of the ultimate goal. In the more near future, I mean, I think just continuing with the work that we're doing, continuing to grow with having more groups at different universities, and growing as an organisation too. So at the moment we operate, so I'm a volunteer, and we have a team, all the directors, that's 5 volunteers, and then we have 1 employee who does 3 days a week. So one of our goals is to try and increase the amount of employee time that we have, because I think that will then directly correlate with the support that we can give to students. So I would just love to see students continuing to step out in boldness when it comes to the pro-life message, and starting groups on their campuses. And it's funny because I think with pro-choicers are concerned, like we were back in January, we were on the front page of the Guardian, and it was supposed to be slanderous, and it was supposed to say how outrageous APS is, and the fact that we have these student groups growing, and it was like, anti-abortion groups mushroom on university campuses. And I took it as the biggest compliment, that if they're getting concerned that actually we are making progress, then that to me is a big success. And I'd like to see that happening, where so obviously more pro-life groups setting up, but what we see as a consequence of that is people trying to start pro-choice societies. And obviously that can cause difficulties for our students, but also great opportunities for discussion and everything as well. So I would see that as a success too, in a strange way.
Oh, great. Excellent. So I suppose that's it. So thanks very much to all of our viewers for tuning in. Thank you, Madeline, for joining us. Really interesting. Thank you for sharing your experience with us. And hopefully we'll be able to make those similar endeavors in Ireland as well. And don't forget, everyone, to tune in next week for the next episode of Outlook with Students for Life Ireland. Thank you.